So I was in the post office the other day, and someone asked me about what I do for work. And of course, I told them what I did. And he asked me a very interesting question, which was, if you could teach someone or me one thing to help with my marriage, what would that be? So I thought that was a really good question because I could say, for example, you can learn safety and the 5 pillars. We talked about ego death in the last week. We talked about identity shifting and internal shifts and having identity-based changes, untethering, and so on and so on. But then my answer ended up being very different than that because I realized that there is one skill that made not only a massive difference to me, but all my clients as well. But this is also the one skill I think that you can do today. And this is really the closest to an overnight fix I will ever talk about. You know, if you follow my channel, you'll know that I always talk about longer term fixes and making identity-based changes, but this is really the one fix that you can do today. So let's find out in this video what that one thing is. And guys, if you want no BS content that you need for permanent reconciliation, so you can avoid a lot of the tactical stuff, a lot of the stuff that you hear today that will lead to only fake or temporary reconciliations that a lot of my clients come to me for, consider subscribing to this channel and click the bell button. A lot of you are not subscribed, so please subscribe. And for those of you who are already subscribed, remember, please vote with your likes and especially your comments. I think your comments is more valuable to the YouTube algorithm than anything. You know that I always say that deeper content like this are not going to be as popular, but they should be more popular. So if you find my channel valuable, please vote with your likes. Please vote with your comments. Please vote with your engagement. Watch the video in full. That really helps us out and get this to more eyeballs as well. So to understand this big point, we need to start with a quote here. So I saw this the other day. I forgot where it was, but this is amazing, right? It says, I want a man who treats their partner well, not because they're weak, but because they're strong. So this can seem like a very simple quote, but this, if you look at it very deeply, is actually very, very insightful, very, very deep. Because in life, there's really you can look at things on the action level, or you can look at things on the intention level. So the action level is what we can see. The intention level is something that we cannot see. And really, right, if you really think about it, you cannot tell if an action is good or bad until you understand the intentions. So going back to the quote again, for example, if I go back to the quote, so the action is, I want a man who treats their partner well, right? The man who treats their partner well, that's the action. But you can do this action from a weak place or from a strong place. If you're treating your partner well because you're trying to basically act all beta and want their approval because you feel insecure, then that's coming out of a weak place. But if you treat your partner well because you're overflowing cup and you are coming from that abundant state, then this action now becomes strong, right? So you don't really know from an action itself whether an action is good or bad until you understand the intentions. Same thing if you think about someone giving money to charity, for example, right? If you see someone giving money to charity, you instantly will say, what a good person. But really, you cannot tell if that person is good or bad until you understand the intentions. And you cannot tell if the action is good or bad until you understand the intentions. So the problem really begins here. When we begin, so you watching this video right now, you begin to assume the wrong intentions from mere actions. And the worst thing also is that when we run with this wrong assumption of intentions. So just to give you a few examples of this, right? I have 2 stories for you. So number 1 is in May of last year, my parents came to the US for a month. And so my wife and I decided to take them to Canada, to Vancouver first. And we went to the French side, very beautiful, right? But on the way there, we have a Range Rover. And my wife decided to pack her suitcase or our suitcase, our stuff into one suitcase. And the suitcase weighed 85 pounds. So if you guys have traveled before, if you have a bag that weighs 85 pounds, so over the 50-pound limit, right, you're going to pay a massive fee. So this is a major, major overage fee. So we ended up paying $250, I think, for the 85-pound bag. And I thought to myself at that point, right? I see this action. And I thought to myself at that point, what is her intention here? And I just don't see any good intentions behind it. I just don't see why this is a good idea. Because in my mind, I was like, dude, we could have just split the 85-pound bag into two 40-something pound bags and we'll be fine. But we wouldn't have to pay a fine. So I saw this action and I was assuming the intention, like, is my wife becoming more and more spoiled? Like, since we made money now, is she just not caring about money anymore? Is she not caring the value of a dollar anymore? Like, is she taking everything that we have for granted? Like, what are we doing here? And throughout the whole plane ride, I remember feeling a bit more pissed and more pissed and more pissed with my wife. And then I started to think about all these other events where she doesn't really care about the money, where she's spending money willy-nilly and just like wasting money and throwing money down the drain. And I kept just making myself more and more angry. And it wasn't until we got to Vancouver, that when we had our time to ourselves, that I asked her, what is going on here? How come you did that? Why not just split into two bags? And you know what she said? She said, Jeff, here's the reason, right? We have a Range Rover, and I didn't know how many bags your parents are going to bring. And I didn't want to ask either. But here's what I didn't want. I didn't want your parents to feel like they have to bring less stuff because we couldn't fit it all in the car. So my thinking was, instead of them having to feel all this rules, your parents, we'll just downsize everything into one bag, and so that we can give your parents more space in the car to put their stuff in. And so really my thinking is that this is really a $250 fee to give your parents the peace of mind, the privilege, and doing them a favor. And as soon as she said that, I remember thinking, wow, this whole time on the plane ride, I was getting angry because I made a wrong assumption about her actions, the wrong assumption of intentions, and I realized that the true intention was something that I would never have thought of, that I would never have figured out unless I asked her. And I felt then very stupid for misunderstanding those intentions. Another example of this. So we went to the UK for 3 months for both work purposes, but also for our mini honeymoon as well. And when we got back from the UK, I remember my partner was feeling a bit aloof or not really present. So we had a conversation about it. And my partner said to me, Jeff, I've been asking you to get me this bracelet for a long time now, but you never have given me the bracelet. Even in the UK, we saw so many bracelets and so many shops. You never bought me those bracelets. And in my mind at that point in time, I remember this instant feeling of a bit of anger, a bit of betrayal, because like here, right, I see her action as she's asking for a bracelet. But the intention, I'm assuming, were all bad, because really at this point I was thinking to myself, right, dude, we just had a $50,000 trip to the UK. And we also had recently a $250,000 wedding. On her wrist right now is a rose gold Cartier watch that is $30,000. And we just built a house too, and I had to build a big down payment for that to build a custom house. And I'm not saying this to brag, but I'm just saying this to show you in my mind. I was like, we've given you so much. I've given you everything. I've given you clothes. I've given you all these material things, but all you care about is me not giving you this bracelet. And I thought to myself, is she becoming a gold digger? Is she becoming money hungry? Is she becoming too materialistic? Are we growing apart because I'm not materialistic at all? And I started to think about, is she ungrateful? Is there something wrong with her? And I started to feel that anger come up in a moment. But, right, once I started to dig deeper, start to understand what is the true reasoning behind the action of her asking for the bracelet here. What is the true reason? She actually said to me after 3 hours of conversation that, you know what, screw the bracelet. I don't want the bracelet. I'm asking this because I feel like I'm not your priority right now. And then we talked about why, and the real reason was that during the UK trip, because of the time zone difference, I was working with my team into the late nights. So dinner time, I was working a lot. Even after dinner, I was working a lot. And so throughout this whole 3 months, she felt like she was becoming more of a second-class citizen. And so This bracelet thing was just one of her manifestation of wanting to feel loved, wanting to feel accepted, wanting to feel understood, wanting to feel prioritized again. Something that I haven't been doing for the last 3 months due to whatever reason. So again, right? The initial action of her asking for the bracelet, I made the wrong assumption right away, right? And I assumed bad intentions. And that got my emotions to be quite upset. But once I discovered it and deeper, I realized that her intentions were actually quite good. It wasn't about the bracelet. She wasn't a money-hungry, gold-digging person, right? She was actually not even asking for the bracelet. She doesn't want material stuff. In fact, she told me the next day even that she doesn't want the bracelet anymore. It's not about the bracelet. I just want to feel prioritized and feeling like not a second-class citizen anymore. And the reason why I tell you these two stories is that I want to show you just how dangerous making the wrong assumptions from actions alone without truly understanding the intentions can be. If, let's say, for the luggage example, I did not go ahead and ask my partner what her real reason was, and I just made this assumption, and I just ran with that assumption, there is an alternate reality somewhere, in some other alternate universe, where I would have carried that misassumption with me throughout my whole life even. There is also it could even have led to a big fight. It could even have led to me getting a divorce, us breaking up. And it could have led me to continue feeling like my partner was this ungrateful person. And same thing with the bracelet story, right? And there is no way in the alternate reality that I could have gone out of this cycle, that I could have seen this possibility. There was no way. And I give this example too because I see so many of you guys in the comment section when you guys are facing divorce, when you guys are facing even finding out your partner's having an affair, or you find out your partner is like hasn't been loving you for a long time and hasn't appreciated whatever it is that you do. So for those of you in broken relationships, if you're in constant arguments, if you're constant fights and misunderstandings, if you feel hate, you feel angry, you feel embittered towards women or your partner in general, like these guys here, you feel angry at your partner for wanting to leave, divorce, or even see other people, you are just overwhelmed with anger, betrayal, and other negative feelings. Let me ask you, is there a chance you could be angry over nothing? Just like how in those moments, I was feeling angry. I was feeling a bit betrayed. I was feeling a bit upset. But I later realized that I was angry over nothing. And that was just one instance. Imagine if I were to carry that anger plus another one, plus another one, plus another one, right? I could imagine myself in an alternate reality where I hate Samantha, where I hate women, where I hate my partner. But all that hate is really done over nothing. It's just my own misassumptions that I made on my own. And do you realize that what you feel right now is pretty much exactly how things spiraled? So things spiraled again because you made a bunch of misassumptions on their actions. I mean, think about it again, like the example with the luggage again. If let's say she asked for the bracelet or we talk about the luggage and I start to just operate from my assumptions and I call her materialistic and I made the conversation about her being materialistic, for example, or I made the conversation about her not understanding the value of money, for example, that conversation would have spiraled out of control. It would have destroyed a lot of safety. It would have caused a lot of misunderstandings. It would cause a lot of baggage, more pent-up feelings, which repeats itself again. And so notice here that, again, you making the wrong assumption from her mere actions is what got you in this cycle of lack of safety, the catch-22, and why your partner wants to get the F out of here in the first place. And now you're doing the same thing. So if your partner is wanting a divorce, wanting a separation, maybe wanting to see other people, that's an action. You're seeing an action. And instantly, right now even, if you feel angry, you feel betrayed, you feel upset, just know that you're doing the exact same thing. You are, again, assuming an intention, in this case a bad one, and you don't know if it's right or wrong. You have no idea if it's right or wrong. This is not even in your purview of vision right now. And I know a lot of you are saying right now, for example, nah, right? I know, like I see the action and I see the intention. There's only I don't care what it is. Whenever you want a divorce, whenever you want to leave the relationship, you are betraying the relationship. Whenever you want an affair, whenever you want to see other people, you're betraying your vows. I don't care, right? I see an action and I don't care what the intention is. It must be bad. If that's what you're saying, what you need to understand is that so deny, right? When I was talking about the luggage story or the bracelet story, in the moment, I instantly went into the wrong intention, assume a wrong intention, and in my mind, there is no way, I just didn't see any other intention that could justify this action, that could color this action in a different way. I just did not see it. And again, what you have to understand is that sometimes this intention, the true intention that they have, it could be in your blind spot. And they call them blind spots for a reason, because never in a million years you could sit down on a couch and try to figure it out on yourself, but never in a million years would you actually figure it out. Now again, there is an alternate reality somewhere where I actually hate my partner, where I actually would say a lot of the same things as these guys because of the misassumptions that I made and me running with those misassumptions. And I would never have realized in the alternate universe how wrong I was, how wrong my assumptions were. I would never have realized the other reason. So again, is there a chance you could be angry over nothing? Again, if you are so sure, how do you know? How are you so sure? And you have to understand too, again, that if you feel all these things right now, right, your feelings is exactly how things spiral in the first place. I mean, think about it. Think about if you were in your partner's position right now. You had so many misunderstandings, right, where small issues always escalate into big things. And because of that, you feel misunderstood. You feel very unsafe. You feel very belittled. You feel attacked. The same way my partner would feel belittled, would feel unsafe, would feel attacked if, let's say, she asked for a bracelet, because really deep down, she was feeling like not prioritized, which she should feel prioritized, but I just attacked her and labeled her as gold digger and everything like that. Or she packed the 85-pound suitcase and I just assumed the worst intentions, the worst reasons out of her and never even bothered to ask, is there a good reason why you did that? Imagine how unsafe, how belittled, how attacked you would feel. And now you decide in your life, for example, hey, I've had enough of this. So you take drastic action. Maybe that drastic action is, I want to see other people. Maybe the drastic action is, I want to have a divorce. I want some space. And whenever you ask for space, for divorce, that you want to see other people, you show your true feelings. Once again, your partner misunderstands you in a worst way possible again, labels you again, attacks you again, makes you feel small again. I mean, wouldn't that just be a reminder of why you needed to leave in the first place? And the worst part about this, again, guys, is the blindness of the cycle. So if your partner wants divorce, for example, and you assume a bad intention from her wanting a divorce, and that pushes her away even more, and she wants even more of a divorce, in your mind, you'll go, I knew it. I knew she was a dick. I knew she was an asshole. I knew she was a bitch. I knew she was ungrateful. And just like in my example of the alternate universe, there is not a reality where you could have realized just how wrong you actually were. And if you watch a lot of my client stories, all who started in very dire situations, by the way, you will see that they mention this word called the TBTT, the thing behind the thing. And they often see their partners wanting divorce, having an affair, as something unreasonable. Because again, they only understand it from their purview. But once they see that, hey, I start to understand stuff from my partner's point of view, once they see the merit in that, right? So my stories, for example, above, or you look at stories like Spencer Davis, and every one of my client stories, in fact, they will start to realize that a lot of the assumptions they made that made them angry at their partner, that made them feel bitter towards their partner for wanting to leave, were actually wrong. You know, they start to realize that a lot of the stuff that they actually argued about, or the things they thought made them incompatible, like Elisa's story or Eve's story, for example, was actually wrong. That they were actually a lot more compatible than they thought they were. And they can actually find more win-wins that they never thought was possible. But again, when they first came into the program, they could not see another alternate reason. They wanted to see their partner as an evil person, but not realizing that them wanting to see their partner as an evil person is the same mental pattern that got them to the shit in the first place. And that just because you're blind to this cycle doesn't mean that a different intention actually exists. And what they find is that once they understand this other intention, just by having this conversation alone, just by having this discussion alone, can make your partner feel a lot safer. The same way, just by asking my partner, just by having a discussion about the bracelet, about the luggage, allows my partner to feel like there is a space for her to actually share her thoughts, share her side, share her opinions, which would instantly lead to less self-preservation, which leads to more open communication, which leads to then less toxic behaviors and more positive behaviors, and making it easier for you to assume more positive in the future. I mean, this is a very, very different cycle. And I'm going to have a hot take here, right? There's a reason why I always say, no issue is as bad as it seems. No couple is really that incompatible. No one really has unresolvable issues. Reconciliation is always possible. We just need to get out of our own way, right? Seriously, look at this. Look at this cycle. One cycle shows you how, just puts you further and further into the cycle of like things being impossible, we are not compatible, and one cycle goes in a very different direction. All the differences is just one skill. So what is this one skill? What is the skill that I need to learn? What is this the skill that I'm trying to get you to learn here? It's what I call developing your antithetic filter. And this skill is actually very simple, guys. So because of the way our human brain works, every time we see an action from our partner, right? It can be small, it can be big. We are going to instantly want to make an assumption about an intention. So that alone is one part of the problem. The second part of the problem is really when you ran with the assumption of the intention and you don't confirm if it's correct or wrong, and you run with it. That's the second part of the problem. And I know a lot of men, right, will say to this and say, but Jeff, I'm good at that. I'm good at not running with my assumptions. I'm very antithetic. I'm very open-minded. I always double check myself. But again, guys, it's not about the 99 times you do it right. It's about the one time you do it wrong. The same way we could have 100 different great conversations in our own relationship. But if I ran with that assumption about the luggage thing, if I ran with my assumption on the bracelet thing, I let myself spiral. Then I let myself derail that conversation. I let that to destroy safety. And then I keep running with that assumption. That running with that assumption will cause more havoc and destroy all the other great 100 conversations that I could have. And I know that sounds unfair, but that's just the reality of relationships in general. It just takes one big weak link to destroy the whole ship. The same way with anything in life, right? Titanic, you think about the submarine that recently imploded. It's not that they have a lot of strong parts to everything, but it just takes one major weak link to implode the whole thing. And that is just life. And I'm sure as a man, you can understand this as well. And so the big issue that I see is that a lot of men, especially when it comes to relationship issues, have become very hypothetical. So if you look at a lot of the comments, a lot of the even comments in this video, for example, you will see a lot of very hypothetical comments. People asking themselves, how am I right? But not really being antithetic and asking themselves, how could I be wrong? And what could I be missing? And the skill of developing your antithetic filter is simply you having more moments throughout the day where you just catch yourself before you run with an assumption for too long, is when you just catch yourself and go, how could I be wrong here? What could I be missing? So I'm not saying that you should never make the wrong assumption. Yeah, I'm not saying that you should never run with your assumptions. What I'm saying, though, is that you need to have a habit of an antithetic filter where you can ask yourself multiple times throughout the day, where you can say, how could I be wrong here? What am I missing? And be more antithetic, so that if you do run with an assumption and that assumption turns out to be wrong, you do not end up running with that assumption for way too long. And you also do not let that wrong assumption wreak havoc on your relationship for too long. The same way, during that luggage example or the bracelet example, there was a moment when I made an assumption, I ran with it for a few minutes or a few hours at the most, but I never let it destroy my relationship. I never let it spiral into something when it's actually about nothing. The antithetic filter is simply the moment when I just have this trigger in my head. And that trigger just is me asking, how could I be wrong here? What am I missing? And often when you ask this question, so you see an action, you make an assumption of an intention, you may not see this. This may not be obvious right away until you have that conversation. The same way during that luggage example or the bracelet example, the actual intention that I found could never have been found even if I sat there and tried to figure it out for a million years. And this skill of having this antithetical trigger is really an effort stat. It's really a habit. It's not something you need to work up to. It's like if I tell you right now, for example, hey, I want you to think about 3 things that your partner has done recently or in the past that made you very upset, that made you feel betrayed, that made you feel embittered, that made you confused, for example. I want you to just take a look at that and go, what could I be missing? How could I be wrong? How could my assumptions be wrong? And then let that fuel your curiosity, fuel the conversation to ask her about what actually happened. And this could be happening for past events, but also you can think about the next time your partner does something that makes you confused, that makes you angry. Just make a decision to pause. Right? It's something you can do right now. If I tell you to do it right now, you can pause. And before you let whatever assumptions you're making that is negative and you running with it and you spiraling by yourself with it, pause. Ask yourself, how could I be wrong? How could this be wrong? Could there be an alternate reason? Could there be an alternate intention that I'm not considering here? And again, you won't see it, but let this fuel your questions. Let this fuel your calm and collected curiosity. And you'll be very surprised as to how much this will change everything in your relationship. The way you feel towards your partner, the way your partner feels towards you, the way you guys handle conflicts, the way you guys handle difficult moments in your life, the way you guys handle this difficult instance of one partner wanting a divorce, finding out about tough truths, etc. You'll be amazed at how much difference this makes. Now, again, this is not going to make all the difference. You're still going to have to remove things like FAE bias, fundamental attribution error, and fix the big 14 mind viruses. Right? You're still going to have to learn the frameworks. But this trigger right here is really the start. You know, this sounds very simple, guys, but I rarely see people do this. And 3 great examples of this, right? Every time we enroll a new client, usually these people have done a lot of therapy, they've done a lot of thinking, a lot of consultation with friends and family, and even oftentimes join another program. And they just feel like they've done everything that they could have done, and they could have done nothing different. That they've tried everything with their partner. But then I ask them in the program, when they come into the program, hey, instead of telling me what you think is right, what you're doing right, just pretend like you are in a doctor's office, right? You're going to the doctor's office because you're sick. Something is wrong. There's no point in you trying to tell a doctor for an hour about all the great things that you do in your diet, all the right things you do in your life. Obviously, something is wrong. Something is broken. So let's spend more time asking ourselves, how could we be wrong? And what am I missing? And lo and behold, they find that when they ask that question, they find a lot of ways that they were actually doing wrong. They find that the level of untethering that they have is not as high as they think they are. They still have a lot more victim mindsets than they initially realized. They realize that their frameworks are not really up to par. They realize that their changes are not really on an identity-based level. They realize that their actions are more striving and less falling. And I'm not going to go into this whole striving and falling. If you want to learn more about that, check out the link above my head. But only by asking, how could I be wrong here and what am I missing, can they actually find what they're actually missing. But if you keep going into life telling yourself how you could be right, very hypothetic, and running with your assumptions, then you will never find the right answers because your mind is tuned in the wrong direction. And I also see a lot of people who come into the program really confused why their partner really wants to leave them that badly. They feel betrayed, they feel angry, they feel confused. Until I tell them, hey, whenever you feel confused because you see an action but you make the wrong assumption here, why don't you use either the TTH or the frameworks to ask questions to figure out whether that's a different intention. The same way I ask questions to find a different intention. And once they find a different intention, they realize that they're not confused anymore. They realize that a lot of them even say that I would have felt exactly the same. And this is really what happens when you see interviews with people who manage to reconcile after affairs. And after they've gone through my program, they don't see affairs as a black and white issue anymore, right? They came in thinking that affair is a black and white issue. They will say things like, if you have an affair, I don't care what your reason is. It's black and white. It's wrong. That's when I draw the line, right? But once you start to understand people's deeper intentions, you start to realize that it's never that black and white. So we're going to publish an interview with Brett and his wife who were dealing with an affair issue, and you'll realize just how not black and white it is. But we also have many interviews already recorded of people who've gone through affairs and reconciled despite, and you'll see also from their perspective why it's not that black and white once we truly understand the level of that intention. We recently also had a story where someone was applying to our program and they saw that we had the action of having a pre-recorded webinar, but he thought it was like a live webinar. And he assumed instantly a bad intention saying like, oh, you must do this because you're trying to sell to me. Until we literally showed him via a call and we showed him like, hey, look, the only reason why we have the pre-recorded webinar is not because of this bad intention, but because we spend 99% of our resources, time and money into our product, into helping our clients, into providing results, not really towards marketing. And I also showed him a case right now where we have a massive exodus from 2 known programs at the moment, because the other programs, they're very good at the marketing side of things, right? The marketing is very shiny, but because they spend so much time on the marketing side, they don't spend time on the product side. And so people are exiting the other program en masse to come to ours because we're the opposite, right? We do not focus on the marketing, but we focus on the product. But people beeline into the other program because they focus so much on marketing. And so the whole webinar thing, if you are ever confused, right, is that I literally just took a successful live webinar that I did in the past, took the recording and said, let's just make that our pre-recorded webinar going forward, right? People should know, since I have a different background now, I live in a different house now, that's not live. That cannot be live, okay? So it's not just, so the action of me having the live webinar is not because I'm trying to like something of a sleazy way to sell to you. It's really because I just don't think about it, right? Because I have the intention of wanting to spend my time on my product and helping clients and helping lives and actually making an impact than me trying to sell myself. And to me, that's a noble intention, right? And once he understood that intention, he realized that, hey, I see the same action, but I see that same action very differently now. Now imagine if that client had seen that action, made the wrong assumption of intention, and ran with it. And he never got to understand just how good of an intention we actually have. He never got to understand what he forgone, what he said no to. And he never understood just how different things could be. For all we know, he could have beelined himself to another program that has shiny marketing and gone to the same trap that a lot of my clients have gone into, where they beeline to another program with shiny marketing, but the shiny marketing often means that they're not focusing on their product. Right? So think about what happens there. Think about what you will lose by doing this again. So the problem is not that you make your assumptions, but once you make your assumptions, do you have filters and check throughout the day? Have you made it a habit to where you check yourself so that you don't run for too long? But because most people have been so used to being so hypothetic, this might be a manual reminder that you give yourself. So a lot of my clients who are early on in the program, for example, they even have a prompt every single hour, every single 30 minutes, for example, to say like, hey, whatever assumptions you just made in the last 30 minutes, how could you be wrong, right? What could you be missing? Think about it, right? So again, the next time you see an action that upsets you, pause, let that be a trigger, and ask yourself, how could my assumptions be wrong here, right? Because the assumptions, again, are creating your emotions, but how could they be wrong? And this is so crucial, guys, because again, like I said, this is really the first step to a major change to everything else. And once you can do this, you open up the possibility to start communicating with people on the level of intentions. You also open up the possibility of understanding people on the level of intentions. Of course, using the frameworks. And once you can communicate on this level, that changes everything, guys. If I got stuck on the level of actions during the suitcase example or the bracelet example, think about how much that could have been derailed. But because I was able to have that filter to go, okay, I see an action, I'm making some assumptions, let me communicate and understand my partner on the level of the intention. That's when I think you will start to have a lot more harmony with people around you. You'll start to understand them more. You'll start to see that people are not evil, that people are actually amazing. We just need to understand their intentions a lot more. You will see that you will align a lot more with people. You will find more solutions. You will find more win-wins. You will find better next steps. You'll create more safety. You'll create more admiration. You'll create more alignment. And you'll create more passion too. This is really the foundation of everything. It's not the only skill you need to learn, but it's a foundation. Okay, so I hope you bake this into your lifestyle today. If you need to set yourself reminders on your phone every 30 minutes to be empathetic, right, to ask yourself how you could be wrong, to question your assumptions, wonderful. But once you build this habit, guys, you open up a whole new world in which you can understand the world, understand people, communicate with people. This is one of the most beautiful skills you can ever learn in a relationship. And it's something you can do today. It's an effort stat. It's a choice. Okay, it's not something you work up to. It's a choice. So guys, if you want to learn more skills like this, you can join me in my masterclass on the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. In the masterclass, I'll show you the big picture idea with skills like this and show you why reconciliation is actually much simpler than you think. For a lot of my clients, reconciliation, they come in thinking reconciliation is the end goal, but really, once they come into the program, they realize that reconciliation is the bare minimum. They're looking for bigger and higher wins than reconciliation because of major transformation shifts like this. So again, if you want to learn more about that, link up above or down below. If you want to apply for the program, I'll discuss how to apply as well at the end of that masterclass too. But for now, guys, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.